People from Georgia don't really travel, at least not the ones I grew up around. Florida beach trips counted as going somewhere. That was the ceiling. Then Sam said his uncle had a place in Panama, free to stay. And somehow, that one sentence changed everything. I didn't want to go. I hate flying, still do. I know what the statistics say. I've heard it 100 times. But no statistic in the world makes it feel less wrong when you're locked inside a metal tube with nothing but clouds underneath you. But Sam kept pushing. This will be the cheapest international trip we ever get, possibly in our entire lives. So I saved for 2 months, and I went. Panama City surprised me. Bars, restaurants, traffic, humid air that stuck to everything, music bleeding through walls at midnight. I liked it more than I expected. The people there moved like they had all the time in the world. We did what guys in their 20s do when they finally escape work for a week. Drank, wandered, ate whatever looked good, acted stupid. A few days in, Sam mentioned his uncle had a second property, further out, rural. The roads narrowed, pavement disappeared, trees got thicker until houses weren't visible from the road at all, swallowed whole by layers of green. We stopped at a tiny roadside stand when the mud got bad. Stray dogs were stretched out under the tables, hiding from the heat in the only shade they could find. The house didn't feel wrong when we arrived. Single-story, metal roof, wraparound porch, screened windows, sun-faded outdoor furniture. Simple. But the trees surrounding it, dense in a way that's hard to explain. Layers and layers of green that your eyes couldn't push through more than 10 feet. At night, the jungle talked. The first night, I didn't sleep. Back home, nights eventually go quiet. They always do. Out there, they never did. Not once. Something was always moving, always making noise. The darkness had a pulse. 2 more days of grilling, drinking cold beer, swimming in a muddy river nearby. One afternoon in a small town for groceries, where Sam's uncle somehow knew half the faces in the street. The night it happened, everyone was inside playing cards. I was losing money because I genuinely didn't understand the rules. Yes, Sam, genuinely. The power flickered on and off, which was apparently normal when storms rolled through. My phone caught 1 bar of signal, briefly, near the side of the house. My sister had been worried about the trip. I hadn't talked to her in 2 days. So I stepped outside. Everything smelled wet. Dirt and leaves and something deeper underneath. I wandered toward the left side of the property, holding my phone up like an idiot, because everyone thinks that somehow helps signal. In a small clearing, where the trees thinned slightly, I got 1 bar. Her phone started ringing. Then something hit my left thigh. Not a punch, not exactly. More like a rubber band snapped hard against skin, mixed with a sharp, instant sting. I yelped and nearly dropped my phone. My first thought was some massive insect. The bugs out there were enormous. Branches shifted above me. I looked up. What I saw is still, to this day, the most frightening thing I have ever looked at in my entire life. Something pale was sitting in the tree, just a few feet above my head. The moonlight came through the branches at a strange angle, and for a full second my brain simply refused to process the shape. Couldn't categorize it. Couldn't make sense of it. My first instinct was, that's a child. Child-sized, pale, completely still, staring directly at me. I opened my mouth to say something. My actual first thought was, how did a kid get up there? when I noticed the shape was wrong. The left side of the body, or maybe the right side from where I stood, simply wasn't there. I told myself branches were covering it. Then it shifted slightly. One arm, gripping the tree. No legs hanging down. No second arm. Nothing else. Just that, pale, thin, pressed against the bark, face turned directly toward me. I know how insane this sounds. That's exactly why it scared me so badly, because my brain kept trying to build an explanation and kept finding nothing. A sick child wouldn't sit like that. An injured person doesn't stay that still, that silent, staring at strangers in the dark without a single sound. And then a sound came. Soft, rhythmic, like someone gently tapping their teeth together. I slipped in the mud. My phone landed somewhere in the grass. I didn't stop for it. I ran straight back toward the house, screaming Sam's name, and hit the porch railing so hard sideways that I still felt it the next morning. Sam thought I got robbed. Once I was inside, under lights, surrounded by people, part of me started questioning what I'd seen. Maybe I panicked. Maybe I imagined it. But my legs still hurt. I pulled up my shorts and there it was. A long red mark across my thigh, like something sharp had grazed me sideways. 3 of us went back out with flashlights. Nothing. No movement. No shape in the branches. Sam pointed his light upward and said, quietly, what I was already thinking. Those branches are too thin. If anything was up there, they'd be snapped. I didn't tell him about the missing limbs right then. I waited until we were back inside. When I finally described exactly what I'd seen, the room went silent. Austin said mange, some kind of animal. Sam suggested a monkey, maybe caught in a trap missing limbs. Neither explanation fit, not even close. I know what a monkey looks like. This had a human face. By morning, I was done. I needed to leave, and I wasn't negotiating about it. Sam could tell I wasn't performing. He's known me since middle school. When I get scared enough, I don't get loud. I get quiet, completely flat. He saw that, and he stopped arguing. He drove me back toward the city. Halfway there, we passed a small roadside cemetery. Bright fake flowers, painted crosses crowded near the road. Sam slowed for chickens crossing through the middle of everything. An older man stood at the entrance smoking, watching our truck pass the entire time. I turned around and kept watching him through the back window until he disappeared. Then Sam asked me something strange. When you saw it, are you sure it was looking at you? Yes, obviously. He was quiet for a moment. Then he admitted his uncle had mentioned things in the woods near that property, things he wouldn't describe. I told him I wasn't going to press for details. He said he hadn't brought it up before because his uncle said crazy things all the time, drank too much, believed in local stories that didn't make sense to anyone outside that place. We sat in a gas station parking lot. I was sweating straight through my shirt. Rain had cooled the air, but it didn't matter. Mountains sat way off in the distance, half buried in fog. And for the first time, that place felt genuinely far from anything I understood. I caught the earliest flight I could afford the next morning. I lived in my car for a while in 2019, a little over 6 months. People always react the same way when I tell them. The face changes, the assumptions start. Drugs, or a total collapse, one or the other, always. But I was just broke and stuck between things. Hours got cut at work. My roommate moved in with his girlfriend. My apartment lease ended. Everything fell apart at once, quietly, all in the same month. I was still working, a storage property outside a town in Oregon, closer to the coast. Lots of rain, lots of trees. I had an old Toyota Camry that somehow refused to die. After shifts, I'd shower at a gym I paid the membership for just to use that one thing, then figure out where I was sleeping. You develop a system. Which grocery store lots don't care if you stay too long, which gas station bathrooms are unlocked late, which parking lots get checked and which ones don't. Most nights I stayed near busier areas because it felt safer. But occasionally, the constant noise and headlights and strangers knocking on windows asking for cigarettes wore me down. On those nights, I'd drive somewhere quiet. That night was one of those nights. My shift had been bad. A storage unit flooded from earlier rain, and a man screamed at me like I personally summoned the weather. After work, I drove without a destination, bought gas station coffee, and kept going north on a small highway lined with trees. There was a wooded park I knew about from before everything fell apart. A day-use recreation area, families, picnic tables, fishing nearby. At night, it was completely empty. Technically, no overnight stays, but there was no gate. I pulled in around 9:30. The parking area curved slightly around tall trees, so parts of it disappeared into darkness fast past the entrance. One concrete bathroom building covered in graffiti. Somewhere nearby, I could hear water. I reclined the seat, watched something on my phone. That was the routine. Occupy your brain until you're tired enough to sleep. Or you just lie there and think too much. Around 11, something moved past the windshield. A person, cutting through the lot fast. She was young, dark hair, light gray hoodie, moving with the specific energy of someone trying not to look panicked while being completely panicked. She kept looking behind herself while walking. She passed directly in front of my car. My windows were fogged and the interior lights were off. I don't think she noticed me. She stopped near the trail entrance for a second, looked back toward the parking lot entrance one more time. Then she went into the woods. I sat up fully. Another person appeared, this time from the opposite direction, near the bathrooms. I hadn't heard a car pull in. I hadn't seen her arrive. Older woman, long dark coat that looked expensive. Too clean, too sharp for that area. Blonde or gray hair. She moved slower than the younger woman had, but her eyes were scanning everything, searching. She spotted my car, walked close enough that I tensed up, expecting a knock. Stopped about 10 feet away instead. I cracked the window. "Did you see a girl come through here?" Her voice was calm, carefully calm, the kind of calm that's actually controlled anger wearing a mask. "Yeah, she went toward the trail a few minutes ago." She nodded quickly. "My daughter got upset and ran off." I didn't believe her, not for a single second. It wasn't one specific thing, it was the whole feeling of it. The younger woman wasn't running like someone arguing with family. She was running like something was wrong. And the older woman's eyes, they weren't worried, they were calculating. I asked if she wanted me to call someone. She said no immediately. Then she smiled at me, and that smile was the strangest part of all of it. It appeared and disappeared so fast, like she'd suddenly remembered that smiling was something people did and performed it on command. She thanked me, walked toward the trail entrance, disappeared into the trees. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was exactly what she said, a family argument, dark parking lot, my brain filling in gaps with something sinister. I told myself that. I stayed reclined and watched the trail entrance through the windshield and told myself that. An hour passed. Headlights swept into the parking lot. Modern, expensive. They lit up the entire area before stopping 4 spaces from my car. A black SUV. New, polished. The kind of vehicle that looked completely wrong in that place, like it had been dropped there from a different world. The engine ran for a minute before 3 people got out. The older woman, a man around 30, and a bigger one who stayed near the SUV while the other 2 argued quietly beside the passenger door. I could hear the tone, low and sharp and angry. At one point, the woman pointed toward the woods. The younger woman wasn't with them. I slid lower in my seat. The bigger man looked directly at my car, went completely still, said something to the others, started walking toward me. I closed my eyes, tilted my head against the seat, kept my breathing even. Footsteps on gravel, getting closer, stopping right outside my window. Breathing, someone standing right there. 10 seconds, maybe more. A light tap on the glass. I didn't move. The footsteps walked away. When I heard all 3 SUV doors close, I opened my eyes, just barely. They were heading toward the trail, the woman first, both men behind her with flashlights. Nobody looked back. I should have left the second they went into the woods. I know that. I've thought about it 100 times since. But I sat there, frozen, another minute, running the math. Because if I called police and it turned out to be nothing, I was the guy sleeping illegally in a park at 1 a.m. explaining himself to cops. That calculation felt real in the moment. I watched flashlight beams weave through the trees, quick flashes between trunks, then gone. Finally, I decided. I put the key in, the engine turned over, and immediately, instantly, like they'd been waiting for exactly that sound, the flashlight beams in the woods swung toward the parking lot. Fast. One beam broke from the trees, then another. The taller man came out of the trail at a run, flashlights straight into my windshield. I couldn't see his face, just his outline. He raised one hand. Stop. I drove. He started shouting. The older woman appeared behind him at the trail entrance, furious now, no mask left on her face at all. The younger woman still wasn't with them. There was almost no traffic on that highway. I drove with my heart slamming in my chest and both hands white on the wheel. Everything in me was certain, the way you're certain about things you can't prove, that something had gone very wrong in those woods. I never found out what happened to her. I've looked. I've thought about whether I should have done something different that night. I don't have an answer. I just know what her face looked like when she crossed in front of my car. Desperate. That's the exact word. My name is Haley. In late 2021, I moved in with my dad in West Virginia to save money. That's the whole story on paper. Remote job, laptop, ticket queues all day, people screaming at me through a screen over things I had zero control over. The pay was barely enough. My dad had been asking me for a while to come stay with him, cut expenses, reset. So I did. His house was my grandparents' originally. They bought it in the 80s. My dad kept it after they passed. Out there, the loudest sounds at night were insects or coyotes somewhere deep in the tree line. My old apartment sat near a busy intersection. Motorcycles at 2 a.m., people yelling outside, sirens. The quiet in West Virginia felt almost unnatural at first. Dad worked for the county highway department, left before sunrise every morning, boots loud on the floors, trucks starting outside, coffee made in a kitchen where every sound carried through the walls. I'd drag myself up around 8:30, set up in the back spare room that used to be my grandparents' sewing room, and start my shift. The internet went out when it rained. There was still a faded square on the carpet where a sewing table had sat for decades. A few weeks in, I noticed tire tracks near the property edge by the woods. Dad said people used the dirt road to turn around when GPS led them wrong. That area had a history of break-ins, too. Sheds robbed for tools, gas siphoned from vehicles and driveways. Random things happened. That was just the place. I didn't feel actually scared until the day that man showed up. Dad was at work. I was on lunch break, sitting on the porch with my laptop and leftover food from the night before, watching birds near the tree line. Genuinely exciting afternoon. Then, someone came up the dirt road. I didn't recognize him. He looked dirty, not homeless exactly, more like someone who slept in their truck regularly. It was already strange that he was walking because there was nothing within walking distance worth coming to. He came into the yard like he already knew the layout. When he saw me, he smiled, asked if my dad was home, then just stood there. His eyes kept shifting, not nervous, something different, like he was listening to a conversation happening somewhere else at the same time. "You want to hang out?" No introduction, no explanation of who he was or why he was there. Just that, standing in someone else's yard. I said no, assuming he'd realize how bizarre he sounded and leave. He didn't leave. He told me he lived nearby, told me he'd seen me outside before. That's when my stomach dropped, because seeing me outside before meant he'd been watching the house, without me knowing, possibly more than once. I said again I was busy with work and started backing toward the front door. He didn't get angry. His face just went blank, like a switch flipped, like he stopped remembering he was supposed to act normal. Then the smile came back. "All right." Hands in his pockets. He walked back down toward the road slowly, disappeared past the trees. I locked the door, texted my dad. "Some weird guy just came up here asking for you and acting creepy, LOL. That LOL still bothers me. I knew I was uncomfortable. I was downplaying it even to myself. Dad replied later, "Keep the doors locked. Call if he comes back. What did he look like?" I finished my work hours, made it to 2:30, got up to make coffee, microwave counting down. I was exhausted. Coyotes had been loud somewhere behind the house all night. A sound came from outside, someone touching the front door handle. Then the door opened. And in the half second between hearing it and understanding it, I knew it was him. I don't know how I knew. I just did. At almost the exact same moment, I hadn't fully locked the deadbolt. Both realizations arrived together. I grabbed my phone from the counter and backed into the hallway. Footsteps moved through the living room. I could hear him in there. And then he was talking, not to me, to himself. A low, running murmur that didn't form sentences I could catch, like two conversations layered on top of each other, like someone talking in their sleep, except moving through someone else's house. I got into my bedroom and locked the door as quietly as I could, called 911. The dispatcher picked up and I whispered, told her a man broke into the house and I was hiding. She started asking me questions, and I was trying to answer while tracking his movement by sound. Footsteps in the hall, coming closer. The dispatcher asked if I could still hear him inside. The footsteps stopped directly outside my bedroom door. I stared at the doorknob and stopped breathing. The muttering continued. Right on the other side, pieces of words, nothing that made sense. The dispatcher was saying officers were on the way, asking me to barricade the door. I pushed the small dresser in front of it. The room was tiny. Bed, dresser, lamp, closet. Nowhere to go. The doorknob moved, testing it. Then he hit the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Again, harder. I said, "Please leave." He screamed back, something about the door, something about me being rude to him. I can't fully remember the exact words because my brain had stopped processing things in sequence by that point. He kicked it so hard the dresser shifted across the floor. The door held. Old solid wood, original to the house. Then he stopped. Footsteps retreating down the hallway. Drawers opening in the kitchen. Cabinets slamming, searching for something, or pretending to, or something else I still don't understand. The front door closed. I sat on the floor and did not move. I didn't trust that the silence was real. I sat there and waited until I heard sirens coming up the road. My dad arrived looking more scared than I had ever seen him. Deputies searched the property. There was a period where no one was sure if the man had gone into the woods behind the house. One thing that confused everyone, he didn't steal anything. Nothing was missing. Deputies noted it specifically. The whole thing clearly wasn't a burglary. A neighbor down the road told police they'd seen a dark-colored car parked near an old logging trail that afternoon, backed deep into the brush so it wasn't visible from the road unless you were looking for it. They found the car a mile away. Registration came back to a man with a long prior record. He had parked deliberately, hidden the car deliberately, watched the house, waited until I was alone. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't someone mentally unwell wandering through the wrong door by accident. He saw me there, alone, and he made a decision. They never found him. He abandoned the car and disappeared. Deputies updated my dad periodically for a while, checked nearby towns, talked to people who knew him. Nothing came of it. I don't think about it every day anymore, but I still think about the moment I was standing in that kitchen, waiting for the microwave, and the front door opened, and I knew before I even turned around.